We have this opportunity today, and I think wherever you are from around the world, the Lord sees you. You've come to hear more about His people, because Bible prophecy, you can't have it without the Jewish people. It is happening so fast we can all hardly keep up with it all, and it's just a blessing to be with you today. So, today's word, I want you to remember it. The word I'm going to speak is responsibility. Responsibility. Okay. What does responsibility, mean toward the Jewish people? Well, we've been talking about the missing link in our faith. I'm just going to recap here a little bit. The first session was how the church has sort of separated. Well, we know she's separated from Israel from some of the teaching that went on for thousands of years. I'll talk a little more about that pretty soon, but we have a missing link that we need to reconnect to. And then we talked about the hands that robbed the cradle and brought up some issues that probably most people didn't even know about. Teachers who were anti-Semitic that were called fathers of the church. And, thank God for technology, because we can roll back the film all the way to history when the first century and find out about how we really got to where we are today, Christianity, and what we see that needs to be done. Well, we definitely need the missing link to be reconnected again to our faith. And those people, I believe, who are in the bride of Christ now, we call ourselves the bride, but the Bible is also clear in the writings of the apostles that Jerusalem is called a bride. And the Jewish people, if you lived with them here in Israel, well, they believe they're the bride of Christ, or the bride of Jehovah. And we believe we're the bride of Messiah Yeshua. So in the end, we're going to be one. We know that. Everything's going to be one according to the writings of the apostles, which is known as the New Testament. But I want to ask the question, what bride gets married? What bride gets married to a groom and doesn't bother to get to know the family? That's my question. So that is one of the things that we need to think about as the church today. And what is our responsibility to Israel? We have to accept full and total responsibility basically for our actions, whether everything we've done and those things we haven't done. So if we've left some things undone, then how do we correct things that need to be attended to, I think, in these days that we live in? And now that we know a bit about history, the history of Christendom, with the missing link that we have, and the hands that robbed the cradle, which took away the Jewishness of Jesus, the Jewishness of our faith in our churches today, then we have to look at this word responsibility. Well, responsibility has a lot to do with answering to God. And we have an accountability to Him according to the word of the Lord. For the Torah, which much of the church does not read today or teach us from, many people around the world just say, why do we need it? We have what we call the New Testament, but that was, Jesus never knew about a New Testament. He only taught the Torah. And when He comes back, He will teach the Torah to the whole world the way it should be taught. Jewish scholars even say, when Messiah comes, He will teach us about the mistakes we've made in interpreting the Torah. And of course, interpretations from the Christian world have not been correct in many ways. So I look forward to the coming of the Lord and saying, wow, won't it be wonderful when he teaches us not from just traditions or commentaries or what man said, but he will deliver the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. It'll go forth when he comes to the whole wide world. And from Jerusalem, the world will know more about the one true God. I think we don't talk about it in Christianity very much, but we need to keep that number one as we learn about our responsibility very much before us. Everything with God, Almighty, Jehovah, Yahweh, Yod, He, Vave in Hebrew, is one. He says, I'm the great I am. And unfortunately, in the history of Christianity, we've seemed to develop two Bibles and two gods. You know, our fathers taught that, some of them did. You know, the God of the Old Testament was an angry God, but the God of the New is compassionate. Well, we don't have two gods. We have one. We have one Messiah, and it should be one book. And the writings of the apostles tell us in Ephesians 4, you know, and the word that we love, that when he comes, there will be one body, one Father, one King of Kings, one Lord, and everything will be one. So we've missed out on quite a few things for a long time. And, you know, unfortunately, the Jewish people have had an endless, constant, continual, that's the only way I can put it, because it wasn't 2 years, it wasn't 20 years, it hasn't been 200 years, it's been 2,000 years of Christian anti-Semitism toward the Jewish people. And you know, I wouldn't know anything about it had I not come to Israel, had my husband and I come to Israel. I really wouldn't know probably much about it because no one taught it in my communities. No one taught about it in church. No one taught about it to us. We had to learn the hard way. And I will again share what life was like when we first moved to Israel. It was, you're who? You're a Christian? Ah, but why are you here? You know, Christians don't help us. Christians hated us. Get away. I don't want anything to do with you. You're 2,000 years late. All these things confronted us. And it made us think, what have we done? What in the world is wrong? Why have we ended up with these questions to us? And then we found out. And then we began to study Christian history. And thank God we've had Bible scholars, we've had in the Jewish world and Christian world who have studied together, rabbis and pastors here in Jerusalem. You know, Dr. David Flusser, a well-known Jewish scholar, and Dr. Lindsay from the Baptist House, you know, they studied for 20 years together from the Hebrew. And they found out all about Jesus and who he really was. And it isn't the Jesus that oftentimes is taught in our nations. And so that's why, you know, we have to know that Jesus definitely is a Jew. And if he's a Jew and we want to really know Jesus, we've got to know his people. And that's why we can't be a bride that is disinterested in the groom's family. So today it's about responsibility. Responsibility. You know, the apostles of Yeshua, the disciples, called Talmidim in Hebrew, they walked with him. They talked with him. They touched him. They sat with him at meal. They had the Seder services with him. They traveled by foot, by boat, to go and tell the story. They were emissaries of the Lord. In other words, they represented him. And after he was crucified and risen from the dead and went to heaven, he sent his emissaries to the world. And when they went, they represented the Lord. And we can tell from their teachings, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, or if we want to call him by the right name, Matthias, Lucas, Yochanan, and Shaul, Paul. They represented him in a way that the people wanted to know more. So what do you do if you're a Christian living in Israel, or if you're in America, or if you're in Hong Kong, or if you're in Europe and you have Jewish people that you know, or how do you relate to these people? Well, we certainly can't relate to any Jewish person with spiritual pride. We need to come humbly before God and before them to be able to admit that forefathers who taught wrong doctrines perpetrated hatred toward the Jewish people. I remember a few years ago on television, there was a documentary. It was put together in the UK, the United Kingdom. It was called The Longest Hatred. And this documentary went around the world on television. And what was it about? It was about Christianity. Even longer than Islam and many others. The hatred for the Jewish people has been strong. It came out. And many other magazines and books, began to show that the life of Yeshua as the disciples who traveled with him was not being shown to the Jewish people. So we have this long, endless legacy of hatred. And how do we change this? What can we do now that we know that things haven't been right? And at the present time, from what I can understand in Christianity, not too many people are talking about Israel. Not too many people are talking about Bible prophecy. And we thank God for those churches who are. But our actions speak so loud to the Jewish people. And, it's louder than preaching to them. Well, when the disciples went to the nations, they were speaking to non-Jews. They were speaking to Gentiles, many wanting to hear about him because they had never been persecuted in his name. But here, when you are in Israel, you quickly learn, as I've mentioned before, that to try to preach to them, it doesn't work, because actions speak louder than words. You can talk for hours to the Jewish people, and they haven't really heard you. Why? Because they say, look, you've talked about a gospel of love all these centuries and shown us a gospel of hate. And I can tell you that one good action of love and compassion to the Jewish people speaks 1,000 words to them, where all of our talking oftentimes cannot. I don't usually, I know that one of our ladies that is present with us, she knows about this, but I'm on a new kind of a mission in helping a family in Kenya. And, these people want to learn about Jesus, and they will listen. And, there's been no pain in his name, so to speak, shown to them. But when it comes to Israel, it's a whole different thing. So I have to say, when I'm with the Jewish people, is the manner that I am speaking to them condescending? Is my heart pure when they need someone to listen to? I try to think of many of the things that were done wrongly in his name. And so this responsibility word that we look at, I think we need to think about something here. Setting the 2,000 years aside, which you can't easily do when you live in Israel among the Jewish people, we can look at the positive. First, I want to say it's a wonderful time that we have right now with learning all about the history of Christianity toward Israel. We can do that. We can search the libraries on the internet and find all that I'm talking about. But it's also a time such as this when we can make things right. And we've got these opportunities to do so. And I'm thrilled that we're a generation that can say to the Jewish people, as Derek Prince always said to us, we owe them a great debt. And can we be thankful? Are we responsible enough to say, I am so thankful for all you've given us as a Jewish person. Everything we possess in Christianity comes from you. Can we say to them, we love the Torah. We're passionately in love with the God of Israel because Yeshua taught us all about him. The writings of the apostles were given by the Jews. The apostles were Jewish. The prophets were Jewish. The psalmists, the covenants, everything has to do with the Jewish people, and it was all spoken about in their Jewish writings. And yet, when we traveled the world and we went to churches, and I say this with all due respect, many pastors couldn't find the books of the prophets because they weren't in them. They don't study them. They consider what they call the Old Testament, which the Jewish people call a living Torah, and which is a continuation, should have been, into what we call wrongly just the new one. It should be one book coming from the Torah, confirming the writings of the apostles, what we call the New Testament, and the New Testament confirming the Jewish scriptures. It's one again. We come back to the number one. We're not two. We shouldn't be two religions, two Bibles, two gods, two messiahs. No, we should be one. And so Derek said we owe a great debt to the Jewish people. And then if we want to learn the whole counsel of God, which often is not taught, we need to connect to God's voice. And God's voice is spoken through the Torah. It was given to Moshe at Mount Sinai. The Jewish people have a saying, Ana nafshi ketavit havit. It means, I wrote down my soul and I gave it to you. And these are the words of God's mouth. They came through the living Torah to God, and they're not old. They're not old-fashioned. They're not done away with. Shaul made it very clear to us that that's not true. We know that the Lord, Jesus, he came to dwell among us, and God chose the Jewish people as his family on earth. According to Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6, it says, unto us. Unto us? Well, who is that us? That us is the Jewish people. Unto us he was born. And of course, we know the gospel is clearly given in the Torah. In the book of Isaiah, it tells he came and how he came to a virgin and where he was to be born from Micah, in Bethlehem, and all about him. So we can freely give the Torah knowing the gospel's right there. But unfortunately, the history has put a big responsibility on us to now that we learned there's a missing link and that the treatment of the Jewish people has not represented Jesus in the way we should have always represented him, that we have this huge responsibility. So we hear God's voice speaking through the pages of God's word. So let's dive in, as they say, and learn a little bit about it, because the Torah is the voice of God Almighty. Psalm 13 and verse 20, bless the Lord, O you angels, you mighty ones who do his word, obeying the voice of his word. In Hebrews 12, verse 20 and 21, it is written that God's voice is here again. For you've not come to the mountain that may be touched, the sound of a trumpet, and the voice of words, which they were so afraid of, and terrified of, they couldn't even endure them. He gave his soul to Israel. And I have friends who tell me that they threw away. They just threw it in the dustbin. The Old Testament. It shouldn't be called old. It's an ancient testament, true. It goes all the way back to Mount Sinai. But we should be reading it and studying it and comparing and referencing God's word in what we call the New Testament, or the newer one, which is actually the writings of the apostles. I will repeat that over and over until we get it, and that they confirm one another. In Deuteronomy chapter 8 and verse 3, it says that he might make you know that man shall not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that proceeds from the mouth, the voice of God, the Lord. So we're back to responsibility again. The bride. It probably will be what some of my Jewish friends have told me. Even my Jewish friends have told me. God always works with the remnant. And there'll be a remnant who will seek the Lord with all their heart and want to purify their souls by studying his voice, which was spoken in the Torah and confirmed by the apostles. And the apostles were confirming the Torah, which Yeshua taught them. Well, we have to cherish our relationship with the Jewish people as Christians. We have to defend her right to the land and support her in ways that are scriptural. And like the beautiful woman Ruth, who was from Moab, she was a Gentile, she cleaved to Naomi. And we have to learn what Ruth really did, because Ruth really learned to stand by and to support and to be with the Jewish people. And she said, don't let anything part me from you, not even. The only thing that can do it is death itself. We've got to let the Jewish people know one of our responsibilities is, as they say in modern English, we have to have her back. Many people, Orthodox people, when we arrived here, the Orthodox didn't want anything to do with us. Don't come near us. Don't touch us. Don't even speak to us. We want nothing to do with what you might have to say because of the history, their families, their grandparents, their relatives, many of them, unfortunately, in Russia, in many lands, were killed and murdered brutally by the hands of people called crusaders and people who hated the Jewish people. And so today, it's amazing. Have we made any progress from being here in Israel? Well, today the Orthodox want to work with us. They want to do things together, to reason together, to to get to know each other. And if you don't build relationships, well, then it doesn't work. So here at Christian Friends of Israel, we don't take a big Bible and shove it in their face because they knew the Bible before we did. But to representing in the right way, that is one of the things we're trying to do. The way that his disciples represented him. And yeah, we cannot just follow creeds and doctrines or faith movements without seeing if indeed that faith movement or that doctrine speaks of God's chosen people. Because there's a kingdom that's coming to this earth. It's not just within us. The Lord resides within us, but there's an actual practical kingdom which will be set up in Israel. And if you spend time with the Orthodox, if you spend time with the people who are in high places spiritually, let's put it that way, people who they're planning on the kingdom being set up here. It won't be anywhere in Washington or London or in Rio de Janeiro or Hong Kong. It's coming to Jerusalem. And so this kingdom that's coming, it's not going to be a banana republic or a Catholic Senate or even a democracy. It's going to be ruled by one God. That's why the number one is so important. It's going to be ruled by one God, one Messiah, and he will give the word of the Lord to all the nations of the whole world from Jerusalem, and it will be given God's way, which I look forward to because there's so many traditions wrapped up in both Judaism and in Christianity. So, in one way of responsibility is that we remember that we joined the Jewish people. In the end, we do not replace them. And so that helps us in our responsibility, in our approach to them. Whether they're in your community, I encourage people in the nations, if you have a Jewish community in your nation, if around, there's Jewish communities in many nations, but if there's a synagogue or a community center or whatever in your area where you live, most of them would be happy today to know that they have Christian friends, to reach out to them and to let them know we're standing with you. In fact, one Jewish man here said, "You are our best friends." Now that's come a long way from the day we arrived. Christians are not only our best friends, they're our only friends, because most of the world is turned against them. Now, there's no reason earthly why they should, but they have. And so we have become their best friends. And we just need to remember that we need to be respectful of the Jewish people, not condemning them in any way, and to know that our responsibility is to be a blessing to the Jewish people in every way that we possibly can, not just to stand by her. In short, it's never to separate from her, like Ruth, spiritually. Ruth, again, I want to repeat a little bit about her. Nothing was going to part her from Israel. She was determined to go with Naomi. She joined herself to her with a committed heart. And she said to Naomi, your God is my God. And that's what we have to do. We can't just sing in front of the Jewish people, our God reigns. It's not our God. The Jewish people knew the God of Israel before we did. And Yeshua came to open the way up to find God. He was and is the way to God, the truth of God, and life lived with God. When we come to the Lord, who is a Jew in the flesh, basically, we should not just go with him, but we have to include his people. And the word convert, as I mentioned before, and I'll repeat it because sometimes we forget these things. The word convert was an acronym added by translators through the centuries. We don't want to convert the Jewish people to another religion. God and his Torah is their commands. And in the Torah, they will find the Messiah. But we have to represent him in the right way. And the Jewish people are forbidden to join another religion. All right? That is the voice of the Lord, basically, that says, do not separate yourself, or you can separate from the world, but do not join another people. He called them to be chosen. I believe that responsibility also, there will be a love that will grow in our hearts toward them, that it won't be just conditional. It has to be unconditional love. Because if we don't learn how to unconditionally love the Jewish people, we won't love them very long. We'll turn elsewhere and we'll say, we're going somewhere else because it's too hard. Because there's still a veil. There's still a strong partial blindness, a stupor, the Lord is very clear in Romans 9, 10, and 11. It says here, it is written in Romans 11 and chapter 8 that God has given them a spirit of stupor. In other words, that they can't see him. Why? Well, this is one of the reasons we owe him a great debt, because God closed their eyes so that we could come into the kingdom. Because there was a day and a time in Jerusalem before the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. If you stood on the baluster, the balcony close to the temple, and you were not a Jew, the sign said, do not come into this temple unless you are a Jew, on the pain of death. There was no way to go in and worship God. That's why the Newer Testament, or the writings of the apostles, said that you were without God. You were without him before Jesus. And he represents us before God. And so he tore that wall down for us so that we can now go into the Holy of Holies. But Jewish people have said to the Christians, we've read the apostles' words that Jesus tore the wall down. Why'd you put it back up? So we have a responsibility to love unconditionally. Besides, if we don't love anyone unconditionally, we got it wrong. No matter how much you want them to come to the Lord Yeshua. If you have a child, if you have a cousin, you have a grandchild, you have a husband who doesn't know the Lord, do you hate them? Do you despise them, as the Jewish people have been over the centuries? Or do you love them and pray for them? Well, We have to love unconditionally. We have to learn to love unconditionally. And we have to represent Yeshua. That's a big part of responsibility. Not come here with a sign saying we're missionaries, because that's the most despised word in the nation of Israel. If you come here and you say that, you'll be here a few hours and on the plane home. But if you say, I'm a Christian, I follow Jesus, and I realize that we've not represented him in the right way, we're here to love you unconditionally, the whole scene changes. And so again, it comes from learning as you are with the Jewish people. But I'm telling you, our staff who goes all over the country, they're not taking and wearing their faith. They are demonstrating their faith. They are showing people that we're worth listening to because we love you. We're commanded to love you. God has commanded us to be a blessing, not a curse. Balaam had to learn that the hard way. And people, when I think of it sometimes in all the centuries prior to our generation, they went to their graves hating Jewish people. Not right. That's sad. And we have so much damage to repair. That's why we're told in the book of Isaiah that you Gentiles, you need to push out of the way all the obstacles you've put there. That's a responsibility we have. We got to push them out of the way. Sometimes that means I have to say, I am so sorry for what was done in the name of God, what was done in the name of Jesus to you and your people. You know, when you have Jewish people come to you and say to me, like they said to me, Sharon, why didn't the Christians help us? We thought maybe they would, but they didn't. They didn't have to love us, but they could have helped us. I wonder what Jesus thought at that time. They were carrying his name, and yet they didn't bother to help the Jewish people. I'm so excited for not only America, the United States, but other countries like Hungary and a few other countries who are standing up today for Israel, because they're saying, God, we're going to be a blessing to your people. We're going to love them. We're going to help them. We're going to support them. We're going to be behind them because God is behind the Jewish people. That's why. They are the apple of his eye. And Jesus is the embodiment of the perfect Jew who fulfilled the Torah for all of us, so that we can go into the Holy of Holies now, and we don't have to become Jewish. But that doesn't mean we can't be Gentiles with a Jewish heart. And in fact, when Jesus comes, he said, I'm going to sit on my throne, and I am going to judge the sheep and the goats. What's that mean? It means the goat nations and the sheep nations. We've got to work in our countries to make sure that our representatives, our ambassadors, our people, and everything, to bless the Jewish people in order to receive the blessings from the cup of blessings, the path of blessing that God set down for us in the Bible. So, you know, once the Jewish people know you're their friends and that you're not going to leave them, they don't ever want you to go. The same people who's pushed me away and said, get away from me. Your people didn't help me at all. My family and my neighbors. And I wondered sometimes if I would have been born back there in World War II, would I have stood in front of my Jewish neighbor's door and said to the Nazis, you don't touch them unless you touch me first? Would I have loved that way? It's called sacrificial love. That's what Yeshua did for you and for me. He gave his life. He didn't say no to God. He said, nevertheless, your will be done, Lord. And so, if we study Exodus chapter 21, we don't have time because our time's almost up. But they had what they call the year of the release. And if a foreigner or a slave was released during this year of release, well, they said, well, nail him to the door. That's kind of like an idiom, don't let him go. I don't, and many of them, the foreigners or the slaves who worked for them, said, I don't want to go. So we want them to love us in such a way that they don't want us to go, but that we're their best friends, even if we're their few friends in the world that are their true friends. And we want to go down in history as loving the Jewish people. When Potiphar and his household, when Joseph was running the household, everything prospered. I don't want to get into politics, but I believe the best thing we can do as a country, any country in the world, is to be with Israel and to protect her, to stand by her, and to listen to what the voice of God said. I will bless those of any nation, of any tradition, any color, race, creed, background, or language of the world. You bless my people, the cup of blessing will be raised upon you. In Isaiah chapter 60 and verse 5, it tells us that when the non-Jews of the end times will come to the light of Israel. Well, we know who the light is. The light is their Messiah, the King of the Jews. He's going to return. But all the nations are going to come up to Jerusalem. Israel isn't going out of the country to their nations, not when he comes. They're coming up to Jerusalem. Because it says, and is written in Isaiah chapter 60, read it real closely because it tells that the abundance of the sea, which is basically the Gentiles, the nations of the world, they're going to join Israel. Ephesians 2:12 and chapter 4:4-6 says, we join them. Isaiah 55:5, nations will run to you. Zechariah 14:6. Remember, we turned to Israel's God when we received Jesus in our hearts and became born again and filled with the Spirit. It's not all about us. It's about Israel and us joining them, not pushing them away, not taking them lightly, not thinking they're not important to God, because they are. The nations will run. They'll ask the way to Jerusalem. How do I get there? Because Messiah will have come back, the Lord. And the veil will be removed at that time. And what will happen? It'll be just like Joseph. He told him, don't take it so hard, because it was for the saving of many people. And so all of these things, these patterns, these foreshadowings, these little mysteries, all and everything is in the Torah, and it is confirmed in the writings of the apostles, what we call the New Testament. And we should be studying both and comparing them to see how beautiful the tapestry comes out when we say, oh, I see that. I know John said that. Or John said something and Jesus said, it is written. Did you read it? So let's remember that we're to cling and hold on, stand by, support Israel, because the hope Tikvah, that's the national anthem of Israel, and talk about it in Ephesians chapter 2 and 12, tells us that Yeshua said salvation is of the Jews, John 4:22. And we Jews, as he told the Samaritan woman, you guys don't really know who you're worshiping. That's what he told the Samaritan, because they said, well, we're not to worship in Jerusalem. It's Mount Gerizim. Well, we Christians know Jerusalem is the city of the great king, and it's where God will put his throne. And he says there should be no division. He never gave the authority to divide from Israel or separate from her. It was, quote, the church that divided us. And we don't want to be on the outside. We want to be inside where the Lord is coming, and know that we don't want to be separated from the Jewish people. I know that I'm running out of time, so I'll just kind of finish here. I only have a few minutes to let you ask questions. But Shaul encouraged us. Paul. Paul encouraged us in Philippians chapter 3 and verse 16. Whatever point we have attained already in the race forward that we're running for the Lord, let us hold our ground, living to move forward in our spiritual walk. And the apostles told us in the writings, follow the example we have set for you. And if anybody teaches another Jesus than what we Jews taught you about, do not follow them. If they taught you a doctrine or they taught you a teaching that we didn't teach you, because the Lord sent us to teach you, don't listen to it. And so our responsibility is to search the scriptures, confirm with what our ears are hearing. Let us not have itching ears in these trying times. Let's dig into the word, as they say today, dive in deep, study the word. The more you learn, the more you want. And that's our responsibility, because the word, the voice of the Lord, needs to be heard in the church today, not man's doctrines. So God bless all of you. And I would just say right now, in these last moments, if somebody's got a question, please just raise your hand and I'll do my best to answer. And my prayer is for all of you to continue on the path of blessing. And that is to let the cup of blessing be raised upon you, your household, your children, your church, your congregation, your fellowship, your home church, your cell group, your Bible study, whatever it is. It can be raised when we're in right relationship with the people who are the family of God, of Yeshua, Jesus Christ. So thank you for letting me speak today. And if you have a question, just raise your hand.
Thank you, Sharon, so much for this teaching. I have quite a number of notes here from what you shared there, and I hope everyone else has lots of notes. We do have a question from Emmanuel Yoder in the USA. His question, and maybe we can bring Emmanuel up on screen and kind of highlight him, is Sharon, if you could please expound more on convert being an acronym. He says he hasn't heard that before. And this is where you were saying in one of the ways we can be responsible, show our responsibility towards Israel, is to not trying to convert them.
Right. What we want to be careful of when you're dealing with Jewish people, that the word convert means you change religions, okay? Now, at this point in time, in the Jewish mind and the Jewish psyche, and it's true, we have two religions. We have Judaism and we have Christianity. Those were the two sects, branches of Judaism that survived the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. They were the two that survived. And so, obviously, up until the middle of the second, third century, it was one religion. So it was man, Gentile fathers, who changed that and made it two religions. And so the Jewish people don't want to convert to another religion. When we come to know the Lord, it's not that we convert, it's we turn to the God in Hebrew. That's what it says. We turn to God. We didn't have God before. We didn't have the God of Israel. And Jesus made a way, as I've spoken. And so it's not wise to use the word convert. Now, even though I have not actually uncovered it, I'm trusting my dear friend and teacher, Dr. Bradford in Sarasota, Florida, who has teaches the Torah to Christians, that he says specifically, the word convert does not appear in the original writings anywhere. This is what he teaches. And that word is been developed and added into as the church began to pull away from the Jewish people. Well, then you need to convert to us. Well, the Jews don't want to do that. And that's against the Torah because the Bible says the nations come up and join Israel. That's kind of the best way I can explain it right now. We turn to Jesus. We fell on our knees, or we prayed, we changed, we turned. Converting is not a word to be used.